Principal laughed. When the black student held a violin, they weren't laughing. After he played, "You'll perform a 3-minute violin solo next Friday at the spring concert," Principal Rebecca Langford announced into the microphone, her voice echoing across the Crest Hill High auditorium. A wave of shocked gasps rippled through the crowd of students. Standing center stage, frozen in disbelief, was Jalen Carter, 15 years old, tall, quiet, and black. In his trembling hands, a violin case he'd never even opened. He hadn't signed up for the concert. He hadn't even signed up for the music program. This was a punishment. It started just 5 minutes earlier when Principal Langford had spotted Jalen standing at the back of the auditorium during the morning assembly. The woman, polished in a navy pantsuit and signature red lipstick, locked eyes with him and smirked. "Mr. Carter," she called out, interrupting the guest speaker, "why are you not seated like your classmates?" Jalen shifted his weight awkwardly, pain searing up his back. He lowered his voice, hoping not to draw more attention. I can't sit right now, ma'am. My back's hurting real bad." Her smile didn't falter. "Can't or won't?" she asked with theatrical flair. She walked down the aisle with deliberate clacks of her heels, dragging the entire auditorium's attention with her. This attitude is exactly why discipline is falling apart around here. Jalen tried again. "Ma'am, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I don't want to hear it," she snapped, cutting him off. Then her eyes landed on the violin case, leaning beside him against the wall. "What's this? I wasn't aware you were part of the music program." "It's not mine," Jalen explained. "It belongs to Amari." "I was just—" "Perfect," she interrupted, a cruel light glinting in her eyes. "Since you're so comfortable ignoring protocol, let's see how comfortable you are on stage. You're officially added to next week's concert, a solo performance." Laughter exploded in the crowd. Someone in the back yelled, "Yo, Jalen, show us your Beethoven skills," followed by more chuckles. I don't even know how to play," Jalen stammered, blood rushing to his ears. "Then I suggest you learn quickly," Langford said, handing him the case with theatrical finality. "You can thank your own arrogance for this opportunity." Jalen stood paralyzed as the murmurs spread like wildfire. From behind he could feel the burning stares. Amari's voice finally broke through the noise. She rushed up to him as the assembly ended. "She can't do that," Amari hissed, her curly hair bouncing as she pulled him aside. "You're not in the music program. This is insane." Jalen's face was pale. "She just did." "You need to tell someone what really happened yesterday," Amari said, "about Ms. Granger and the chair. You're hurt because of her." Jalen looked away. The truth was, it had started the day before. Ms. Elaine Granger, their English teacher, had shoved him onto a broken chair in the back of the room after he'd tried to explain it was unsafe. A metal rod pierced through his shirt and cut into his back. He'd yelped in pain, jumped to his feet, only to be yelled at again for disrupting class. He'd been sent to the office bleeding, but Principal Langford had been in a meeting. No one ever followed up. No one ever cared. That night, his mother, Denise Carter, had gasped when she saw the angry gash. "Who did this to you?" He didn't want to answer, didn't want to watch the disappointment rise in her eyes. She was already working 2 night shifts a week at the ER. "You need to tell someone," she insisted, pressing a damp cloth against the wound. "No, Mama," he said. "It'll just get worse." Jalen had learned long ago, when you're quiet, Black, and from the east side of Crest Hill, the system isn't built to believe you. It's built to break you. That same night, unable to sleep from the pain, Jalen flipped through the old family photo album. On page 16 was a picture of his father, Marcus Carter, holding a violin. "He played?" Jalen asked his mom when she came in to check on him. "A little," she said, running her finger across the faded image. He had a gift, could pick up anything and play it by ear. But life didn't leave room for music. After you were born, he gave up the dream. Jalen traced the photo again, this time slowly. Now, standing in the hallway with Amari's violin case in hand, the weight of that legacy settled on his shoulders like a dare. That afternoon, in the kitchen, he sat staring at the unopened case. His mother set down a plate in front of him. "You didn't eat lunch again." Jalen didn't respond. "You still haven't told me what happened at school today." Her voice was gentle but firm. "I got punished," Jalen finally said, "in front of the whole school. She's making me perform a violin solo in the concert next week." His mother blinked. "But you don't play violin." "Exactly." A beat passed between them. Then she sat across from him, met his eyes. "There are two kinds of people in this world, Jay. The ones who fold when others try to break them, and the ones who get back up and play anyway." She gestured at the case. "Which one are you?" Jalen didn't answer. "You're a Carter. Your granddad couldn't read till he was 30, but taught himself and became a pastor. Your father worked 3 jobs and still played at church when he could. He didn't get his chance. But you've got one now, even if it's a cruel one." The next text that buzzed on Jalen's phone was from Amari. "I can come over, show you how to hold it. Just open the case." He stared at it for a moment, then opened the latch. The wood gleamed in the low light like a secret waiting to be discovered. That night they practiced at the kitchen table. Amari sat across from him, guiding his fingers. "Your back's gonna make it harder, but we'll figure it out. It's all in the posture." Jalen winced as he lifted the instrument. "This is hopeless." "No," she said, "just hard. And you've done hard before." He drew the bow across the strings, and the sound that emerged was rough, screechy, almost painful. Amari flinched, then smiled. "Again." They kept going, mistake after mistake, until Jalen's arms ached and his fingers stung. But in the tiny victories, when a note rang clean or a movement came smoother, he started to believe that maybe, just maybe, he could pull it off. When they finished for the night, Jalen stood in front of the mirror, violin tucked under his chin. "They laughed at me today," he whispered. Then he looked into his own reflection, calm and steady. "But they won't be laughing for long." He didn't know how, not yet, but deep down something old stirred inside him, something that didn't belong to Principal Langford or Ms. Granger or the school board. It belonged to him, and it was finally ready to be heard. Jalen woke up the next morning before dawn, his body still sore from the night before. His fingers tingled with residual stiffness, and a dull ache throbbed across his lower back. But none of it stopped him from quietly reaching under his bed, pulling out the violin case and setting it on the edge of his desk. He opened it like it was something sacred. For the next hour, he practiced the same 3 notes Amari had shown him, bow trembling at first, then gradually finding its rhythm. The sound wasn't pretty, but it wasn't screeching anymore, and for Jalen that was enough, at least for now. At school, he avoided eye contact as he walked through the halls. The whispering hadn't died down. If anything, it had gotten louder. People laughed as he passed by. Someone made fake violin noises with exaggerated squeaks when he stepped into homeroom. "You got that Stradivarius swagger, Jay," a football player joked, bumping shoulders with his friend. Jalen ignored it. He'd expected this. But what he hadn't expected was the hallway near the music wing to be completely locked down. "All practice rooms are reserved," a printed sign read, taped to the door. He tried anyway. The door rattled, unmoving. "You looking for someone?" a voice asked behind him. Jalen turned. It was Mr. Carter, the school's music teacher. Older, maybe late 40s, with deep lines under his eyes and a tired but wise kind of energy. He looked at Jalen the way someone looks at a puzzle they're starting to solve. "I was just Hoping I could use one of the rooms, Jalen said. To practice. You're not in any music class, Carter replied, crossing his arms. So why would you need to practice? Jalen hesitated. Then he told the truth. Principal Langford is making me perform a solo at the concert, as punishment. Mr. Carter blinked. Punishment? For what? For not sitting during assembly. My back was hurting, but I guess that didn't matter. The man's expression hardened. Music is not supposed to be used as a weapon. Come with me. He led Jalen into a small practice room with a beat-up piano and a chair that looked like it had survived a war. Jalen took out the violin and held it up, waiting. Let me see what you've got, Carter said, leaning back against the wall. Jalen hesitated, then played the short melody Amari had taught him. It wasn't smooth, but it was real. Mr. Carter didn't speak for a few moments after Jalen finished. Then he walked over and adjusted Jalen's bow grip. Too stiff. Relax your wrist. He moved around him again, this time lifting Jalen's left elbow slightly. Your posture's off because you're compensating for pain. You injured? Jalen didn't answer at first, then nodded. Yeah. A teacher pushed me down onto a broken chair, cut my back, but no one really did anything. Mr. Carter didn't press further. He just looked at Jalen, then at the violin. You've got a natural ear. You're not guessing where the notes are. You're feeling them. That's rare. Jalen raised an eyebrow. Is that good? It's not just good. It's the difference between playing music and making it matter. They practiced for the next 30 minutes. Mr. Carter corrected more technique, pushed Jalen's fingers into place, and even played a simple tune himself to demonstrate. His violin sang. It wasn't flashy, but it was full of soul. As Jalen packed up to leave, Mr. Carter paused at the door. Come back tomorrow. Use this room till 5. I'll be around. Jalen nodded, but just before stepping out, he turned and asked, You think I can actually learn enough in a week to not make a fool of myself? Mr. Carter gave a small smile. With the right mindset, you might do more than just survive the performance. You might change how people hear you. By Thursday, the hallway whispers had morphed into something else, expectation. Some still mocked, but others had started asking questions. You really learning violin in a week? Yo, that's kinda wild. You actually serious about playing? Jalen didn't answer most of them. He just practiced. Every lunch period, every free moment, even during homeroom when he could get away with it. His fingers blistered. His back screamed. But he kept going. Friday afternoon, just before the bell rang, Principal Langford's voice came over the intercom. A reminder. Next Friday's spring concert will feature a special solo performance by our own Jalen Carter. Let's all be sure to show our support for this unique addition to the program. The tone of her voice was unmistakable, mocking, sweetened with just enough sarcasm to twist the knife. In the back row of the classroom, Jalen sat frozen. After school, he went back to the practice room, only to find it locked again. This time, another sign had been added. Practice rooms unavailable this week due to mandatory orchestra rehearsal. All others must vacate by 3:30. Jalen stood in the hallway, staring at it. She's blocking me, he muttered. Looks like it, a voice said behind him. Amari. We'll figure it out, she said. Come to my house tonight. My uncle's got a guest room he turned into a studio. You can practice there. Jalen nodded. They walked out of the school together, quiet at first. Then Amari said, You know, it's kinda crazy. What? You're actually good. Not just good for someone learning in a week. Like, really good. Jalen didn't know how to respond. Later that night, as he sat in the studio with the violin under his chin, he remembered what Mr. Carter had said. Music that matters. He closed his eyes and let the bow glide across the strings. This time, the sound was less jagged, less hesitant. It told a story, his story, of pain, of silence, of being overlooked, but also of defiance. He didn't realize Amari had been filming until he finished. "What are you doing?" he asked, startled. She lowered her phone. "Just a clip. You should hear yourself." Jalen hesitated, then watched. It was him. A little stiff, a little rough, but real, powerful in a way he hadn't seen himself before. "You think I can actually do this?" he asked. Amari looked at him, her voice serious. "I think you already are." The next morning, Jalen walked into school with the violin slung over his shoulder like armor. His fingers were raw, his back still tight from the night before, but his mind felt sharper than it had in weeks. Every note he played at Amari's house had chipped away a piece of the fear inside him. Now all that remained was focus, and the growing fire of defiance. He barely made it 3 steps inside the building before he saw the new signs. Music wing closed for spring concert prep. No student access. His stomach dropped. Mr. Carter wasn't standing in the hallway like usual, and when Jalen knocked on his classroom door, there was no answer. He glanced toward the main office window and spotted Principal Langford seated at her desk, speaking in hushed tones with Ms. Aldridge, the orchestra director. It didn't feel like coincidence. That afternoon, after a long day of classes filled with side eyes and smirks, Jalen walked to the park across the street, where Mr. Carter had told him they could meet if the school shut him out again. He waited for 15 minutes, then 20. Finally, the familiar green sedan pulled up. Mr. Carter stepped out, his suit jacket slung over his shoulder, and a look of irritation etched into his face. "Sorry I'm late," he said. "Langford's cracking down harder than I thought." "They locked all the rooms," Jalen said. "She knew you were progressing. Probably didn't like that." Jalen stared at the ground. "Feels like she wants to make sure I fail in front of everybody." Mr. Carter sighed, then pulled a folding music stand and 2 camp chairs from the trunk of his car. "Then we give her a reason to regret it." They practiced right there in the grass. Cars rolled by. A dog barked. But Jalen tuned it all out as Mr. Carter broke down a new piece, more complex than anything they'd tried before, Bach's Minuet in G. "Why this one?" Jalen asked. "Because it's deceptive," Mr. Carter replied. "Simple enough to learn quickly, but emotionally rich. It connects." Jalen began learning it measure by measure. It was harder than anything he'd done before, but something about it felt right, like the music carried centuries of resilience. And now it had found him. Halfway through practice, Carter paused and looked him in the eye. "Jalen, why haven't you reported what happened with Ms. Bronson?" Jalen stiffened. "No one would believe me. Principal Langford sure didn't." "I would." "Others would too," Carter said. "You need to know what she did wasn't just wrong. It was abuse, and it won't stop unless someone stands up to it." Jalen stared ahead. He thought about his mom working double shifts, trying to keep everything afloat, about the scar still healing on his back, and about the cold smirk on Langford's face when she forced the violin into his hands. "I'll stand up," he finally said. "But not the way they expect." Mr. Carter smiled. "Good, because you're more than just a student playing a piece. You're a challenge to their entire idea of who gets to shine." As Jalen walked home later that evening, violin on his back, he felt a strange sense of calm. He was done playing by their rules. If they wanted to humiliate him, he'd give them something unforgettable instead. But the next twist came before he could even reach his front porch. Aisha was waiting outside his house, her eyes wide, her phone clutched in her hand. "You need to see this," she said. She played a video, and Jalen instantly recognized his own face on screen, bow in hand, eyes closed, playing the rough but emotional piece from Amari's studio 2 nights ago. It had been uploaded to a student-run social media page with the caption, "Punishment or Prodigy." Jalen Carter's violin disaster might surprise you. It already had thousands of views. Comments flooded in. Wait, he can actually play. This goes hard. Langford's gonna eat her words. Jalen's stomach dropped. You posted it? Aisha shook her head. Number I sent it to my cousin. She shared it with a friend and it spread. He felt like the air had been knocked out of him. Now everyone's gonna expect something. Or they'll finally see what you're capable of, Aisha said. You've been practicing in the shadows. Now they know you're coming. He didn't sleep much that night. By Monday, whispers had turned into stares. Students approached him in the hallway, asking if the video was real. Some of them, ones who'd mocked him days ago, now acted impressed. You really been playing for only a week? You gonna do that piece at the concert? Yo, I showed it to my mom. She cried. But not all the attention was welcome. During fourth period, Ms. Bronson called him to the front of the class, under the guise of collecting homework. As he approached her desk, she leaned in. I hope you're not letting a few likes go to your head, she whispered. Jalen said nothing. You still have a 10-page essay due Friday. Don't think you're getting a pass just because you're Langford's pet project now. I'm not anyone's project, he said quietly. She narrowed her eyes. You're still a problem. Jalen walked back to his seat, her words echoing in his ears. After school, Mr. Carter handed him a sealed envelope. From an old friend of mine, he said. She teaches at Eastman. Jalen opened it and read the handwritten letter inside. David told me about you. I'd like to come hear you play. There was a name signed at the bottom. Dr. Lena Hawthorne, chair of the string division, Eastman School of Music. Jalen's pulse quickened. You told someone at Eastman? He asked. I didn't just tell her. I sent her your video, Mr. Carter replied. And she wants to see what happens when someone like you is given a chance. Jalen stared down at the letter, heart pounding. Suddenly, this wasn't just about surviving Langford's setup anymore. It wasn't just about proving Ms. Bronson wrong. Now it was about showing the world what they tried to keep hidden. And for the first time, Jalen Carter believed, really believed, he might be ready. The stage lights were hotter than Jalen expected. As he stood alone in the auditorium that Thursday afternoon, violin under his chin, he tried to visualize the audience that would soon fill the room. The empty seats were intimidating enough. He exhaled slowly and drew the bow across the strings, letting the first notes of the minuet in G ring out. They wavered at first, then steadied. Again, Mr. Carter's voice echoed from the back. Make the phrasing speak. Think of it like a sentence. Each note is a word. What are you trying to say? Jalen nodded, adjusted his grip, and tried again. This time the melody flowed smoother, his fingers gliding more confidently. When he finished, Mr. Carter walked down the aisle toward the stage. Better, a little stiff, but the emotions coming through. He smiled. They're not ready? Jalen managed a small grin. I'm not sure I am either. You are, and I've got a surprise that might help with that. Mr. Carter reached into his bag and pulled out a polished, deep-toned violin case. I didn't want to bring this until I knew you were serious. Jalen's brow furrowed as he opened the case. Inside was an older, beautifully worn violin that seemed to hum with age and memory. Whose is this? He asked. It was my mentor's, a jazz violinist from Harlem who taught me everything I know. I've kept it safe for years, and I think it's time someone played it again. Jalen reached for it reverently. Are you sure? She'd be honored, especially knowing you're about to make a room full of people rethink everything they thought they knew. Jalen didn't have words. He nodded once, then tucked the violin beneath his chin and let it sing. It sounded richer, fuller, like it carried stories. Later that night, while reviewing sheet music in his bedroom, Jalen's phone buzzed. "Private number," he answered cautiously. "Hello? Is this Jalen Carter?" A woman's voice, calm but firm. "Yes, who's this?" "My name is Dr. Lena Hawthorne. I chair the strings department at Eastman. Your teacher, David Carter, sent me some of your practice footage." Jalen froze. "You actually saw that?" "I did, and I was impressed. Raw, yes, but with something most students lack, a natural connection to the music. I'd like to attend your performance tomorrow." He sat up straighter. "Seriously? I'm flying in tonight. I've already spoken to your school's administration about a guest pass." His heart pounded. "Thank you. I mean, I didn't expect—" "Don't play for me," she said gently. "Play because you have something worth saying. The rest will follow." After the call, Jalen sat in stunned silence. Then he looked over at the violin Mr. Carter had loaned him. Somehow this all started with a punishment. Now it felt like the beginning of something much bigger. But the system wasn't done pushing back. The next morning, just before homeroom, Principal Langford called Jalen into her office. He walked in to find Ms. Bronson already seated, arms folded. Langford gestured for him to sit. "We've received concerning reports about your behavior, Jalen. Specifically your refusal to follow school guidelines around extracurricular focus." Jalen blinked. "I've been attending all my classes. I turned in my assignments." "Yes, but you've also been using school resources without proper permission. And your recent popularity online has caused disruptions." He stayed quiet, jaw clenched. "I'm placing you on academic probation effective immediately," Langford continued. "Failure to meet any academic requirement moving forward could result in disqualification from all school-sanctioned performances." "You're trying to keep me off that stage," he said finally. Langford offered a tight smile. "I'm trying to protect the integrity of the event. The spring concert is a showcase of our best, not a redemption project." Ms. Bronson added, "And some faculty members are concerned this has gone too far. You're not in the music program. You're not qualified." Jalen looked between them, anger simmering. "But I am good enough. You're just afraid people will see it." Langford's smile faltered. "Watch your tone, Mr. Carter." Jalen stood. "You can put whatever label on me you want. I'll still be on that stage tonight." He walked out, pulse racing. At lunch, he found Amari and Aisha waiting. "They pulled the academic probation card?" Amari asked. Jalen nodded, "and hinted they could pull me last minute." "They can't," Aisha said. "Too many people know you're performing. You have support now." But Jalen's nerves were spiraling, and that's when Aisha pulled a folded envelope from her bag. "I was saving this for after," she said, handing it to him. Inside was a letter, handwritten in blue ink. "Jalen, you don't know me, but I watched your video and showed it to my little brother. He's 11, black, and plays cello. After watching you, he said, 'If he can do it, maybe I can too.' I just wanted you to know, whatever happens tonight, you've already changed someone's life. Thank you for showing us what's possible." Camille B. Jalen read it twice, then folded it carefully and placed it in his pocket. Whatever Langford and Bronson tried tonight, he would not let them win. This wasn't just about music anymore. It was about all the kids who'd ever been told they weren't enough. And finally, it was his turn to speak. Not with words, but with strings. The sun was setting behind Roosevelt High, casting long shadows across the auditorium lawn. Inside, the final preparations for the spring concert were underway. Stage lights tested, rows of chairs adjusted, and the orchestra tuning up backstage. But Jalen Carter wasn't in the green room with the other performers. He stood in a supply closet just off the hallway, the violin case pressed against his chest, his back against the wall, his heart pounding harder than any metronome. Aisha pushed open the door, slipping in quickly before closing it behind her. "They've got the guest list locked down," she whispered. "Langford's trying to keep Dr. Hawthorne out. She told security she's not on the official invite list." Jalen stared at her. "You're kidding me." "She isn't backing down," Aisha said. "She's already called the district office, but we both know Langford's pulling strings behind the scenes." Jalen gritted his teeth. "They're scared." "Of course they are," Aisha said, stepping closer. "You're about to stand on that stage and tear down every lie they've built about who's worthy of respect." A knock on the closet door made them jump. It opened to reveal Mr. Carter, face pale but eyes fierce. "They tried to remove you from the program," he said. 15 minutes ago, Langford called the board president and claimed you forged your performance clearance." "What?" Jalen's voice cracked. "I had to bring out every document, every witness, every time-stamped email. I even played a segment of your last rehearsal for them. Eventually, they relented, but barely." Jalen let out a shaky breath. "She's doing everything she can to shut me down." "And failing," Mr. Carter said. "But there's one more thing you need to know. Langford isn't planning to introduce you herself anymore. She's asked Ms. Bronson to do it." Jalen's stomach twisted. "So she can control the narrative." "Exactly, but I've already arranged for Dr. Hawthorne to meet you after the performance. You just need to get through what's ahead." Jalen nodded. "Then I'll go through it head first." Backstage, the orchestra took their places for the opening numbers. As the audience filed in, Jalen peeked through the curtain. He saw his mom, wearing her nurse's scrubs and her best earrings, sitting with Amari near the middle. Her eyes scanned the crowd nervously. He also spotted Langford, seated front row with her arms crossed, looking unimpressed already. Just behind her sat the school board members, some indifferent, others clearly intrigued. Then Jalen's gaze locked on someone near the far right. Dr. Lena Hawthorne, seated between two parents. She offered a subtle nod when she saw him. He exhaled. He wasn't alone. The concert began with the orchestra's classical pieces. Applause came in waves, polite but warm. Then came a jazz ensemble performance, then the choir's tribute to American composers. Finally, Ms. Bronson stepped onto the stage. She smiled into the mic with a forced elegance that didn't reach her eyes. "Our final performance this evening comes from a student who, until recently, had no formal music training. A young man who, we hope, will demonstrate that discipline and exposure can create improvement in any student, regardless of their background." Jalen flinched. The implications stung. "Please welcome to the stage, Jalen Carter." Silence stretched a half-second too long before a few hesitant claps trickled out. Jalen stepped into the spotlight, violin in hand, his back still aching from hours of tension. He placed the violin under his chin, took one deep breath, and let the first notes of Massenet's Meditation float into the air. The sound was soft, delicate at first, like the whisper of a memory. Then it grew. The bow danced across the strings with unexpected control. Emotion poured through the wood and wire, sweeping across the audience in waves, gasps, then stillness, then tears. Jalen played not with the perfection of long-time training, but with something far rarer: honesty. He wasn't just performing music. He was telling a story, his story. He saw it in their faces, the change, disbelief shifting into awe. Even Langford was leaning forward now, lips parted, as if trying to reconcile the boy she'd tried to humiliate with the artist now standing center stage, commanding the entire room. When the final note faded, the silence held for a breath. Then came the eruption. The audience shot to their feet, clapping, cheering, some whistling, some crying. Jalen lowered the violin slowly, stunned. His mom was on her feet, hands over her mouth. Aisha and Amari were shouting his name. Dr. Hawthorne stood with her arms folded, smiling proudly. But Langford remained seated, arms still crossed. That's when the second twist hit. From the auditorium entrance, two sharply dressed individuals walked briskly down the aisle toward the front. One carried a tablet. The other wore a badge clipped to his belt. Jalen noticed Mr. Carter rise and move toward them. A quiet exchange followed. Then the man with the badge stepped toward the mic as the crowd quieted. "Sorry to interrupt," he said, "but we'd like to address a matter involving Principal Langford." Gasps rippled across the room. The man turned to the principal. "Our office received an official complaint of academic retaliation, falsified disciplinary records, and interference in scholarship opportunities related to a student performance." Langford stood up abruptly. "This is outrageous. I don't even know who you are." "I'm Special Investigator Raymond Boyd, with the Office of Educational Equity and Compliance," the man replied, "and your emails to the district office were flagged during our review." Her face drained of color. Mr. Carter stepped forward. "I submitted them this morning." The tablet was turned toward the board members. Lines of text, emails from Langford to Bronson, mocking Jalen's performance, planning to block Dr. Hawthorne, and suggesting Jalen be put in his place before this PR stunt gets out of hand. You weren't supposed to," Langford stammered. But it was too late. The board president rose from his seat, flanked by two members. "We'll continue this discussion in private," he said. "Effective immediately, Principal Langford, you are placed on administrative leave, pending a formal investigation." As Langford was led out, Ms. Bronson quickly tried to follow, but Dr. Hawthorne intercepted her with a cold glance. "I'll be filing a report on your comments tonight as well," she said, quietly. Jalen watched all of it unfold, the violin still in his hands. He had come to play. And now the truth was playing louder than any string ever could. The air in Roosevelt High buzzed with an energy Jalen had never felt before. Overnight, everything changed. Whispers of, "Did you hear about the concert?" echoed through every hallway. Students who once walked past him without a glance now stopped to say things like, "That was insane, man." Or, "Dude, you made Langford look like a clown." Jalen didn't care about the fame. What stayed with him wasn't the applause or the viral clips that had started circulating. It was the stunned silence before the standing ovation, that breathless moment when everyone finally saw him for who he was. But not everyone was celebrating. Langford's office was now sealed off, her nameplate gone. In its place was a temporary plaque, Acting Principal Dr. Sandra Greer. Dr. Greer, a seasoned educator with a calm presence and sharp eyes, called Jalen to her office the next morning. "You've had a whirlwind few days," she said, gesturing for him to sit. Her voice was gentle, but her tone carried weight. Jalen nodded. "Yes, ma'am. It's been a lot." "I watched your performance," she said, "twice, and I read the preliminary report from the Office of Equity. You showed tremendous grace under pressure." "I just played," Jalen said, trying to downplay it. "No," she corrected him, leaning forward. "You did more than play. You exposed a system that's been failing students like you for years." Jalen looked down at his hands, still rough with new calluses from the violin. "I wanted to ask," she continued, "would you consider speaking at the next school board meeting about what happened and what needs to change?" Jalen hesitated. "I'm not really a public speaker." "Neither is most of the world," Dr. Greer smiled. "But sometimes the right voice is one that speaks from truth, not polish." He didn't say yes. But he didn't say no either. That afternoon in music class, Mr. Carter walked in with a letter in hand. "This came for you," he said, handing it to Jalen. It was a cream-colored envelope with embossed letters. Eastman Preparatory Conservatory. Jalen's hands trembled slightly as he opened it. He read silently, eyes widening. Mr. Carter arched a brow. "Well, they're offering me a summer scholarship," Jalen whispered. "Full tuition, plus private lessons. And they want me to perform at their summer showcase in upstate New York." The class erupted. Aisha jumped out of her seat and hugged him tightly. "You deserve this," she said. "All of it." But even in the joy, Jalen noticed something strange. Miss Bronson stood near the back of the room, arms crossed, her face unreadable. Later that day, he found out why. During a walk through the garden courtyard, Aisha caught up with him, breathless and wide-eyed. "Jalen," she said urgently, "I just heard something from Mrs. Flores in administration. Bronson filed a curriculum violation complaint against Mr. Carter." "What? Why?" Jalen asked, stunned. "She claims he overstepped his role by offering private lessons and pushing non-standard materials. She's trying to get him investigated." "That doesn't even make sense," he said, his voice rising. "She's trying to punish him for helping me." "Exactly," Aisha said. "Langford's gone, but the cleanup crew is still fighting back." Jalen didn't hesitate. That night, he emailed Dr. Greer, attaching copies of Mr. Carter's emails, lesson plans, and the original approval slips Langford herself had signed weeks earlier. "I don't know what the rules are," he wrote, "but I know the truth. Mr. Carter saved me when everyone else set me up to fail. He deserves better than this." The next morning, Dr. Greer made an announcement over the intercom. "Effective immediately, all staff inquiries related to the spring concert are to be redirected to my office. There will be no further disruptions or retaliations under this administration." She never mentioned Bronson by name, but everyone knew. Later that day, Mr. Carter pulled Jalen aside. "I saw the email," he said softly. "Thank you." Jalen shook his head. "You did that for me first." That weekend, Jalen and his mother drove to a small studio downtown, where a local news station was filming a segment about emerging student artists. He was nervous again, this time not about playing, but about speaking. As the cameras rolled, the reporter asked him, "Why do you think your story connected with so many people?" Jalen thought for a moment. "Because a lot of people know what it's like to be underestimated," he said finally. "To be seen as a problem before you're seen as a person. I didn't get better overnight. I just finally got a chance. And someone who believed in me." The segment ended with a clip of his performance. The views climbed quickly. Messages poured in from teachers, musicians, even strangers. One stood out, a direct message on social media from a famous jazz violinist. "You've got fire in your playing," it read. "Keep going. The stage is waiting." Jalen sat back, phone in hand. He thought about Langford's smirk that morning in the auditorium. He thought about her laugh. They weren't laughing now. Jalen stood just outside the school board meeting room, his palms sweating despite the cool air conditioning. Inside, rows of chairs were filled with teachers, parents, students, and reporters. Dr. Greer had insisted he didn't have to speak unless he wanted to. But after everything that had happened, he knew he couldn't stay silent. He adjusted the collar of his shirt, feeling the warm weight of his father's violin case hanging over his shoulder like a silent promise. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about truth and what came next. Inside, the board president tapped the mic. "We're here to discuss the recent disciplinary action and the subsequent investigation into Roosevelt High. First, we'd like to thank our interim principal, Dr. Greer, for her leadership during this time of transition." Polite applause followed. "And now we have a student who's requested to speak." Jalen Brooks. Jalen walked slowly to the podium, each step echoing louder than the last in his head. The murmurs in the room quieted. He glanced down at his prepared notes, then folded them and looked straight ahead. "I didn't ask to be here," he began. "This all started because I couldn't sit during an assembly." A few confused expressions flickered through the crowd. "My back was injured," he explained. "From a broken chair I was forced to sit in, even after I tried to say something. Then I was humiliated by my principal in front of the whole school, forced to play an instrument I'd never touched before. It was meant to break me." He paused, letting the words settle. "But it didn't." He scanned the audience. Miss Bronson was there, sitting stiffly next to the district attorney. A few teachers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Instead, it led me to something I didn't know was mine, a gift, music, and a piece of my father I never got to know in person. He tapped the violin case gently. "I found my voice through this. But not everyone gets that chance. Not every student has a Mr. Carter. Not every school has a Dr. Greer." He let that linger. "We talk a lot about justice in schools, but justice isn't just about rules. It's about giving students the safety to speak, the freedom to try, and the chance to fail without fear." He nodded toward the board. "I'm not here for sympathy. I'm here because things need to change." As he stepped away, the room was silent. Then came the applause, slow, rising, then erupting into a standing ovation. Even some board members clapped. Later, as Jalen exited through the side hallway, he was intercepted by a woman in a gray suit. "Jalen Brooks?" "Yes, ma'am." She offered her hand. "Vanessa Green, State Superintendent's Office. I watched your performance online and read your file. I'd like to schedule a meeting with your mother and Dr. Greer. There may be an opportunity for statewide student leadership. If you're interested." Jalen blinked. "Leadership? You have a voice, Mr. Brooks, and people are listening." That night, as he and his mom drove home, she reached over at a stoplight and squeezed his hand. "Your dad would be so proud." He nodded, his voice caught in his throat. When they got home, Jalen checked his messages and saw a string of emails, colleges, music programs, interviews, even a small grant offered by a nonprofit arts foundation. Then he saw one that made him sit up straight. From Dr. William Chambers. Subject: Summer Mentorship Invitation, Juilliard Young Artists. Jalen opened the message, barely breathing. "We'd be honored to mentor you this summer. Your growth under adversity is exactly the kind of spirit we want to cultivate." He turned the screen toward his mother, who covered her mouth with her hand, eyes wide. Before he could process more, his phone buzzed. A video was going viral. Someone had recorded a clip of Bronson arguing with a reporter after the board meeting. "This isn't over," she snapped on camera. "That boy manipulated the system. He had help." The reporter, unfazed, responded calmly. Or maybe, for once, the system helped him. Jalen didn't smile. Not exactly. But a deep, quiet satisfaction filled him. They weren't laughing anymore. And now he was just getting started. The courtroom was packed. Rows of community members, parents, teachers, and local media filled every seat as Jalen entered, flanked by his mother and Dr. Greer. At the front, the judge presided over what had become the most publicized hearing the Roosevelt County School District had ever seen, the official disciplinary hearing for former Principal Bronson and English teacher Ms. Calloway. Jalen took his seat in the witness row, violin case beside him like a silent guardian. His fingers traced the smooth surface without thinking. Across the aisle, Bronson sat rigid in her charcoal blazer, her lawyer whispering hurriedly into her ear. Ms. Calloway avoided eye contact, shifting in her chair like the seat itself burned. The school board attorney stood. Today we will present testimony and evidence regarding multiple incidents involving abusive behavior towards students, including but not limited to coercion, physical harm, public humiliation, and retaliation through academic manipulation. Bronson's attorney objected immediately. These claims are exaggerated at best and politically motivated at worst. My client was maintaining discipline in an unruly school environment. The judge held up a hand. We will hear testimony and review the video evidence before reaching a conclusion. Then they called Jalen. The moment he stepped up to the stand, the room hushed. "You understand you're under oath?" the attorney asked. Jalen nodded. "Yes." "Can you describe what happened the day you were injured in Ms. Calloway's class?" Jalen recounted the broken chair, the warning he gave, the shove, the pain that followed, and his trip to the nurse's office, denied by the principal. Murmurs rippled through the crowd as he spoke, but it was the video, silent, grainy security footage showing Calloway pushing the chair into his back, that sent gasps through the courtroom. Bronson's face paled as the screen showed her intercepting Jalen outside the office, coldly brushing off his plea for help. "And what followed?" the attorney prompted. Jalen took a slow breath. "She forced me to play in the school concert. She knew I'd never touched a violin in my life. She made it public. It wasn't discipline. It was punishment." "And yet," the attorney said, softening, "you played." Jalen looked up, meeting the eyes of the judge. "I did. And because of that, I found out something I didn't know about myself, or my father. That I could play. That music was part of me. And maybe that punishment became the very thing that saved me." Bronson's lawyer tried to rattle him during cross-examination, insinuating that Jalen exaggerated the situation for attention. But each time Jalen stayed calm. "I didn't ask for any of this," he said, steady. "They made me visible. I just chose to use that visibility to tell the truth." By the end of the hearing, the decision was swift. Principal Bronson and Ms. Calloway were both found guilty of professional misconduct. Their licenses were revoked. The board issued an official apology to Jalen and his family. Most importantly, Roosevelt High was mandated to adopt an independent oversight committee to monitor student welfare and launch new diversity, equity, and arts access initiatives. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed as Jalen emerged. "How do you feel?" one asked. Jalen paused, relieved, grateful, and ready. Ready for what? To keep going. Weeks passed, the media moved on, but the impact didn't fade. Roosevelt High transformed. Dr. Greer stayed on as permanent principal. Mr. Carter was promoted to Director of Arts Programs for the entire district. The school installed a student-led equity panel. Jalen was the first chair. And then came the call. Juilliard. An invitation to audition early for their Young Artists Fellowship, not next year. This summer. The night before his audition, Jalen sat alone in his room, violin across his lap. A photo of his father sat on the desk nearby. He closed his eyes and played, not for applause, not for redemption, but for peace. Afterward, he sat in silence for a while. Then he turned to the camera. "If you're watching this," he said, voice low but steady, "maybe you've felt underestimated. Maybe someone tried to define you before you even had a chance to define yourself. I want you to know, you don't have to accept their version of your story." He smiled slightly. "I didn't." He paused, then added, "If this story moved you, if it reminded you of something inside yourself or someone you love, subscribe to this channel. Hit the bell so you don't miss the stories we share here. Because this is just one story. There are thousands more like it, waiting to be told, and maybe yours is next."